Okay, I'm going to get you all involved at some point or other. Don't look at me with fearful faces, it's all okay. But I want you to get involved because you'll learn more and you'll understand more about what we're doing. So, and loving being back in Australia. Now today, I could stand here and I could motivate you and I could inspire you. And for some of you I may. But my goal is not to do that. My goal is to challenge you. My goal is to make you think. And my goal is to make you question. See, like magic. So have you ever heard this? People are our greatest asset. Has anyone ever heard that? Has anyone ever said that? You ever said that? Show of hands, don't be shy. Right? People are our greatest asset, right? It's probably not true. Probably, right? 95% of the time, people in a business are not the greatest asset, and they're not treated like the greatest asset. Your people are the same as your competitors' people. They're the average out of the market that you can attract to your business. Now, if you can actually make people your greatest asset, it is like dynamite. But for the most part, it's simply not true. It could be a line in the office from asset. What if they were? There's a guy at Harvard Business School by the name of David Yoffie who's a strategy specialist, and he's done some research on competitive advantage in strategy and how you actually drive a sustainable competitive advantage. And different sources of competitive advantage are easier to overhaul by your competitors. So for example, if you manage to establish an advantage over your competitors in terms of price, that can be overhauled. That response lag can occur within 60 days. So within 2 months, your competitors have caught up to you again. If we're talking about advertising, and you can manage to establish a competitive advantage there in advertising, well, that could last you for as much as a full year. In innovation, we all talk about innovation, right? Innovation is so important, right? How important is it to innovate and to be better than our competitors? But innovation, let's say you crack the innovation competitive advantage, maybe 2 years you'll get out of that before your competitors catch up with you. The only advantage that is lasting and keeps you ahead of your competitors for a really long time is an advantage in people, leadership and culture, human resources. That's it. And if you can build something there, it is sustainable because it will take your competitors longer than 7 years to catch you if you can actually build an advantage in your people, leadership and culture. So this is why it's super, super important, right? But for most of us, we don't do it. Because rather than being our greatest asset, I would say that in most organisations I've come into contact with, and I've been in lots, people are the most underutilised asset in that organisation. Now, I'm going to give you a few examples here, right? We put so much focus of attention on the tangible, measurable parts of business. We put much less focus on the people side because it's intangible. And so let's say I'm working for Anna, I'm reporting to her, and I go up to her one day and I say, look, Anna, I need to have a chat to you. You know that deal I'm negotiating on behalf of the organisation? Well, we've done our research. We know the deal is worth about $10 million. But I was thinking overnight, and it's going to be pretty hard to get that value out of the negotiation, and it'll take a really long time. So I'm just figuring, why don't we just settle now and settle for $5 million and just be done with it and move on? Anna would look at me like I was from Mars, right? Why would you leave $5 million on the table, half the value of a deal, just because you thought it was going to be difficult or it might be time consuming? And that's really tangible, right? Let's look at the equivalent statement with people. Now, I swear to you, I have heard these words come out of an executive's mouth into my face. You ready for this? Look, I know Jeff's not performing, but I was thinking of putting him under performance management, and it's going to be really, really hard. It'll be time consuming for me. It'll take a long time, and I don't even know what the outcome would be at the end of it. So I'm just going to leave Jeff the way he is because he's okay. That is ridiculous. You're leaving money on the table. You're leaving value on the table because you're not doing the work to get Jeff to perform the way Jeff needs to perform, and you think it's okay. But because you can't attach a hard dollar amount to it, it's like a victimless crime. And so who knows how much money you've lost, how much value you've forsaken because you haven't done the work that gets Jeff to perform to the standard that Jeff should perform at? And why is it that we avoid these things? Being hard and being time-consuming is what? It's an excuse. What's the real thing that sits behind this? Pain. I don't want to have to sit down and have a hard conversation with Jeff, because guess what? Jeff, at the end of that conversation, might not like me. I'm risking whether or not I'm going to be liked. And the very, very first thing about being a leader, and you are all leaders, and the very, very first thing about being a leader is respect before popularity. Respect before popularity. If you're trying to be popular, guess what? As a leader, you've already lost. You've already lost. You know why? Because if you're trying to keep everyone happy, it's impossible. Completely impossible. Every day, when I walked into CS Energy, I knew that 5% of the people there hated me for no apparent reason. Like my haircut, my tie, my title, I don't know, whatever. Didn't matter. A bunch of people hated me with really good reason, but 5% hated me for absolutely no reason at all. And guess what? It's just the way it is. That's the way the world works. And so if you want to be a leader, you've got to be okay with that. Because if you spend your time agonising about whether or not you're liked, if you're worried about what other people think about you, more so than you are getting the result, we all love to be loved, no, don't get me wrong, you're going to end up in a bad place. And you'll find leadership really hard and you won't enjoy it. And your people will actually suffer. Now, we're going to talk about what motivates people later on. But the other excuse that I hear often is that, well, I can't talk to Jeff about this because I might demotivate him. And we all know that happy workers are productive workers. So I want to keep Jeff happy. So I don't want to risk demotivating him. Has anyone heard that? Has anyone said that? I don't want to risk demotivating someone because happy workers are productive. So we all know happy workers are productive workers, right? Yeah? No? Yeah, who says yes? Are happy workers productive workers? Yeah? No. They might be. But just because they're happy workers doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be productive. Now let me just take you through this thing called causal link and correlation. Because there's all this research coming out now that says happy workers are productive workers. No, it's bullshit. It is. Correlation says two things are linked to each other somehow. For example, there's a correlation between smoking and alcoholism. So if you're an alcoholic, it's much more likely that you smoke. The incidence of smoking in alcoholics is much higher than the general population. But no one would suggest that being an alcoholic causes you to smoke. But there's no causal relationship there, it's just a correlation. A causal relationship is one that is immutable. Altitude and temperature. The higher up you go above sea level, or the further south you go in the case of Hobart, but the higher up you go from above sea level, the colder it becomes. It's a causal relationship. So even on a beautiful, sunny, 36 degree, 150% humidity day in Brisbane, if you're up in a plane, it's still minus 50. And that's just the way it is. So just be careful about this correlation causation thing. Happy workers may be productive or they may not be. We know that unhappy workers definitely aren't productive, but just make sure you question everything. And so to enhance this point even further, do you guys measure engagement? Where's Kate?
Yes, we do.
You measure engagement, right. So, well-known engagement survey instrument, Aon Hewitt. And I was talking to one of the guys there many, many years ago, and he was telling me about this Queensland-based organisation that had just been surveyed and had this astronomical result, right? This organisation had the most engaged workforce that this Aon Hewitt consultant had seen in a long time. So I thought, that's really interesting. Now, I knew the organisation and I knew one of the individuals who worked there. And I managed to catch up with him a couple of months later and I said, hey, I was hearing about your Aon Hewitt score and it was through the roof. Like, it sounds like that is an unbelievable place to work. You guys are all so highly motivated. What's going on there? And he's going, oh, mate. He says, this place is unbelievable. It's the best job I have ever had. Like, we go in there for our shift, boss doesn't give a shit what we do. Like, completely unsupervised. If we're on night shift, there's a special room we've got where we can go and it's got a bed. We go and take turns to have a snooze. if we're short of cash any week, we can just book our own overtime and go and work it to sort of build up the financial coffers a little bit. He said, it's fantastic. He said, best job I've ever had. So the employees loved the place. It was a fabulous place to work because there were no demands put on them.